A leading economist warns the Philippines faces slowing growth and tighter fiscal space, but says there's still a way forward. Sujin Kim has that story. Go ahead, Sujin.
Mai, in a highly anticipated policy briefing held during the 17th State of the Presidency convened by the Center of Policy Education and Governance, senior economist Dr. Victor Abola issued a stark, data-driven warning. The Philippines is at a critical juncture, facing sluggish growth, shrinking fiscal space, and a surging wave of global uncertainty. Under the Marcos Jr. administration, domestic demand remains the primary driver of the economy, but growth momentum is slowing. This as inflation on the surface appears tamed. Abola forecasts a full-year rate of only 1.6%, citing record-low global rice prices and declining crude oil costs as temporary reprieves. But the real danger, he said, lies in the Trump tariffs, a wave of protectionist measures expected to hit by August 1. Although the Philippines exports only $12 billion to the U.S., $6 million is directly exposed to the new 20% tariff. Abola estimates a GDP hit of minus 0.5% to minus 1%, a blow that could be deadlier if domestic consumption falters. More alarming is the country's dwindling fiscal space, he says. The Philippines' debt-to-GDP ratio continues to hover below the 70% threshold, but the burden is rising. To complicate matters, the peso, Abola argues, is an overvalued currency, which has hobbled export growth and undermined employment. Philippine exports have stagnated below 100 billion pesos, while Vietnam, which maintained a depreciated currency for over 2 decades, has surged to nearly 400 billion in exports. Abola's proposed solution: slash policy rates from the current 5.25% to as low as 3%. With inflation neutralized, this monetary easing could stimulate investment, housing, and infrastructure. But to avoid a worsening trade gap, he also urges the Bangko Sentral to rebuild gross international reserves by buying dollars, not borrowing them. Without corrective action, he warned, the country risks being flooded by diverted imports from China, widening deficits, and diminished job growth. But if we reduce rates, manage our currency, and invest in agriculture, there is a path to 6% GDP growth by 2026. And those are our latest updates from Quezon City. Back to you, Mai.
Thanks for that report, Sujin Kim. The value of transactions through InstaPay and Peso Net surged to 11.1 trillion pesos in the first half of this year. Data from the Bangko Sentral shows this is nearly 40% higher than the 7.98 trillion pesos recorded in the same period last year. Michael Ricafort, chief economist at Rizal Commercial Banking Corporation, says this growth is driven by the continued rise of online commerce, which accelerated since the pandemic. Fresh River Lakes Corporation, or FRLC, a unit of First Gen and operator of the 165-megawatt Cignal hydroelectric power plant, secures a 15 billion peso loan from major banks. In its regulatory filing, First Gen says the loan will support its operations and financial obligations. FRLC signed the loan agreement with BDO Unibank, the Bank of the Philippine Islands, and Rizal Commercial Banking Corporation for general corporate purposes. The Securities and Exchange Commission warns the public against job offer scams. The SEC describes the modus as a tasking and recharging scheme where scammers contact their victims through messaging platforms and offer trivial tasks like ordering or purchasing items for a supposed e-commerce platform. But the victims are required to deposit minimal amounts to access a dubious e-commerce platform. The victims are enticed to deposit more money in escalating amounts to get higher paying tasks. The SEC calls on the public to file a complaint at the SEC's Enforcement and Investor Protection Department. 5 unions in Argentina's aviation industry are protesting in the capital, Buenos Aires. They are rejecting regulatory changes, delays in wage negotiations, and privatization threats of public companies. The unions also want to raise employee salaries to cope with inflation. State media reports the protests did not disrupt flights. Philippine shares barely move in this rainy Tuesday. The PSE index ended flat with a slight uptick to close at 63.55, finishing the day as the sixth best performer in Asia. Majority of the sectoral indices ended in the green, with mining and oil rising the most at 0.1% or 0.9%. Advancers narrowly outpaced decliners at 97 to 96. Total value turnover reached nearly 5 billion pesos. The day's most active stocks ended mixed, with DigiPlus falling the most at more than 1%. Philippine 7, meanwhile, rising the most at more than 2%. Meanwhile, the foreign exchange market, the peso is currently trading at 57.01 against the greenback, appreciating from the previous close of 57.18. That's a wrap for today's Business Brief. I'm Mai Rodriguez. Join us again tomorrow as we bring you the stories that help you plan your next big, bold moves in business. Only here on the Bilyonaryo News Channel. See you then. The markets are closed, but the business stories are just heating up. Hello, I'm Mai Rodriguez. Catch up with us on Business Brief. Asian shares are mixed on Tuesday as U.S. stock indexes edged toward new record highs ahead of a busy week of earnings from major American companies. Japan's Nikkei 225 is down after initially surging, but the market reopened following Monday's holiday. The drop comes after the ruling coalition lost its majority in the upper house in Sunday's election. Analysts say the market first climbed as investors were relieved that Prime Minister Shigeru Ishiba vowed to stay in office despite the setback. However, the election results have increased political uncertainty and left the government without the strong majority needed to pass legislation. South Korea's Kospi and Singapore's Straits Times are also down, while Hong Kong's Hang Seng and China's Shanghai Composite are up. But Australia's ASX is flat with a downward bias. In the currency markets, the US dollar appreciates against the Japanese yen, the Singapore dollar, South Korean won, and the Thai baht. But it is flat against the Hong Kong dollar, while the Australian dollar depreciates against the US dollar. In commodities, gold prices are down by 0.1%, while all markets are mixed. In the cryptocurrency space, Bitcoin is up, while Ethereum is down by nearly 2%. The free trade agreement between the Philippines and the European Union is shaping up to be the most comprehensive trade deal the country has pursued so far. That's according to the Department of Trade and Industry's Bureau of International Trade Relations. The agreement includes government procurement and digital trade, among others. The DTI says both sides are committed to crafting a modern agreement that reflects evolving trade priorities. It also aims to deliver real benefits for businesses and consumers in both the Philippines and the EU. The People's Survival Fund, or PSF, has approved nearly 100 million pesos in climate adaptation grants for 5 new projects across the country. The Department of Finance says the funding will help local governments address climate vulnerabilities in their communities. The projects include reforestation and the establishment of flood warning systems. With this latest round, the PSF has now supported a total of 21 local climate adaptation projects worth 1.4 billion pesos. President Bongbong Marcos continues his high-level meetings in Washington on Monday ahead of his talks with U.S. President Donald Trump. He sat down with Secretary of State Marco Rubio. They agreed on the importance of an alliance between Washington and Manila to maintain peace and stability in the Indo-Pacific region. They also discussed efforts to advance the shared prosperity between the two countries. Marcos will next meet with Trump to secure a favorable deal or trade deal. The U.S. president imposed a 20% tariff on Philippine products set to take effect on August 1st. Finance Chief Ralph Recto believes the Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas still has room to cut policy rates further this year as inflation continues to ease. Recto said the BSP rate cuts could depend on the actions of the U.S. Federal Reserve. The BSP has trimmed policy rates by a total of 125 basis points since last year. This is to support economic growth amid manageable inflation. The Philippine Stock Exchange's ambitious target of 186 billion pesos in new capital this year faces challenges, according to a market expert. Speaking to BNC's Business 360, Jonas Ravelas of Reyes Tacondong and Company said a more realistic estimate could be close to 100 billion pesos given the current global uncertainty. Ravelas also pointed out that a potential upgrade in the country's credit rating could help drive market confidence and push toward meeting these targets.
We've been talking about the Philippines on the road to A, and probably that, if we do our cards right, we can have that either in the next 6 to 12 months, and that could add to the push to seeing the glow back to the market.
Landslides hit Cannon Road and other areas in Baguio after days of heavy rain triggered flash floods and road closures. The north-south supply chain is now under strain, affecting tourism, truck routes, and trade flows to and from northern Luzon. Let's get the latest straight from the ground. Joining us now, Baguio City Mayor Benjamin Magalong. Hello, Mayor Magalong. Good afternoon po.
Good afternoon, Mai. Good afternoon sa ating mga viewers and listeners.
Mayor, how's the situation in Baguio at kamusta po ang panahon dyan ngayon?
Okay, we continue to have experience intense and heavy rain. Tuloy-tuloy pa rin. Walang let up yung ulan dito ngayon since Friday. In fact, canceled na naman yung classes for the past 2 days. We canceled classes. Start 6 years old and below. I'm rather grade 6 and below. And for tomorrow, we just received a memorandum from the Office of the Executive Secretary that all classes at all levels, including government offices, suspended ang work. So, at the same time, we're doing everything to address itong mga problema namin with our evacuees. We have about 29 individuals that comprises about 8 families that are now at our evacuation centers.
Mayor, your assessment so far in terms of the damage caused by the incessant rain. Sabi niyo nga po, last Friday pa nagsimula.
Yes, we're now working on our RDNA, yung rapid disaster assessment. At right now, we cannot quantify at the moment, but just to inform you, we have about 19 soil erosions, or tinatawag natin landslide, a combination of medium and small landslides. Meron din kami mga damage na mga houses. We have 13 partial damage and 1 totally damaged. Meron din kaming 1 totally, siguro napanood mo sa video yung pagkakasira ng isang sasakyan. But the good news is we don't have any injuries or fatalities.
Mabuti naman po as to casualties, wala pong na itatala. Pero yung evacuees po, you mentioned about 8 families seeking shelter in evacuation centers. What are their needs at this time, sir?
They're doing okay, and we're providing all the necessary support and assistance, including food sa kanilang lahat. So, pati na rin yung kanilang mga pangangailangan, naibigay naman na natin lahat, and they're okay. Everybody's okay.
Mayor, the status of Cannon Road, is it still closed? How many landslides were recorded there?
Marami tayong mga small landslides along Cannon Road, no? And at the same time, meron din tayong mga boulders na bumagsak doon. In fact, there's one particular big boulder that's now fell about the other day. Tapos meron pa kami nakikitang dalawang big boulders that probably anytime soon, pag lumakas ang ulan, babagsak din yun. So we're working closely with the MGB and at the same time with the DPWH, paano ibabagsak yun? Because that would, it's now posing as a risk. At ang dami-daming bahay na tatamaan doon sa baba. Kaya pinag-uusapan namin ngayon anong klaseng mode ang pagtanggal doon sa dalawang huge boulders na yun.
Given that situation, Mayor, is Cannon still closed? And what about the other roads going to and from Baguio City?
Yeah, good question. Cannon Road is closed right now. All the other thoroughfares leading to the city of Baguio, they're open. Yung Kuala, meron lang tayong problema doon sa Halsema Highway because there are actually two areas doon na you have to exercise caution because of the continuous landslides.
I can imagine clearing those boulders na nahulog po, no, could be challenging. Is the Public Works and Highways Department helping you, the LGU, in clearing operations?
Yeah, they're very they're very alert and they're very responsive to every time we call them. Kaya we would like to thank the Department of Public Highways for all the support they're providing. Pati na rin yung different health and emergency offices na nandito, Red Cross, together with the other volunteers, Department of Health, nandyan sila lagi para tumulong naman sa amin at mabilis naman sila.
Mayor, hindi naman po nagka-problema in terms of power, the power situation, water and telecoms?
In so far as water is concerned, wala naman kaming problema. Tuwan-tuwa nga kami at tuloy-tuloy yung water namin dito ngayon. But electricity, sometimes we experience brownouts. But the good news is our electric cooperative, Beneco, in just a matter of 2-3 hours or 4 hours at most, are able to restore them.
What's your advice to the public then, given that Pag-asa's forecast of continuing rains until Friday?
Well, siguro yung lang gusto pa rin magbakasyon, I would like to visit the city of Baguio. I would suggest and I would highly, advise you to please take Marcos Highway or Nagilian Road. And please bring your jackets, bring your raincoats, talagang wet, kundi rin, umbrellas. Talagang rainy dito, and the forecast is that until weekend, we're going to experience intense and heavy rain.
Mayor Magalong, thank you for your time, sir.
Maraming salamat din po.
Mag-ingat po kayo, Mayor. Baguio City Mayor Benjamin Magalong. We're taking a short break. More business stories coming up next. You're watching Business Blue.